You can't fire the owner because
Nope.
he can't fire himself. Someone's head's going to roll, unfortunately, in this situation. And it's probably Stefanski and Barry.
I saw on The Athletic.
I don't think that's fair, by the way. It's Stefanski, that part.
I agree. I was saying the other day on my podcast that Barry should be fired. And I said I wouldn't fire Stefanski, but a couple of people made the point of saying, well, if you fire the GM, you got to give him a chance to hire his own coach, which is fair.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
So I would fire Barry. I would hire a new GM. If that GM thinks Kevin Stefanski's a good coach, wants to stick with him.
Right.
The situation in Cleveland has escalated with the NFL. Sources indicate GM Andrew Barry is prepared to move on from head coach Kevin Stefanski if he refuses to elevate Shedeur Sanders. The Browns are weighing a major quarterback change. Leadership appears to be aligning behind Sanders and pushing for immediate action. This is a high-stakes decision about control and the team's direction.
I think it's unfair for me to comment in I guess, maybe on behalf of the industry. All I can say is this, the time that we spent with Shedeur, and what he's done throughout his college career is impressive. He's an impressive young man. He's a really good quarterback. Sometimes, fit comes into play. And I'd also say this, there are 4 more rounds of the draft. And then maybe lastly, it's less about where you get picked and what you do after you get picked. That's really the most important thing. Getting to know him over the course of the spring, he has a ton of resolve.
Andrew Barry appears to be at a breaking point. Pressure from fans and within the organization to play Shedeur Sanders is intensifying. Barry is pushing for a move towards Sanders, while head coach Kevin Stefanski remains cautious about altering the depth chart. The divide is clear. One side wants acceleration, the other a measured rollout. The organization is under heavy scrutiny, and the focus has shifted to when, not if, Sanders sees the field.
Has the 4th highest odds of any head coach this season to be fired. He's clearly on the hot seat. It's been a discussion for really a couple of years now, dating back to last season's 3-win season. And he's always had kind of hot and cold seasons. And now the sports books are saying he's 4th on the list. Number 1 is Mike McDaniel of the Miami Dolphins, Brian Dable of the Giants at 2, Shane Steichen at 3, and there is Kevin Stefanski plus 650 to be fired.
This has moved beyond tension to outright stubbornness. Rather than elevating Shedeur Sanders, the staff has chosen Dillon Gabriel. The current depth chart looks less like a forward plan and more like resistance to change. Fans have been clear about who they expect to see, yet the organization keeps delaying. Every week without a real evaluation of Sanders slows development and blurs accountability. Cleveland is choosing a conservative approach when a decisive decision is needed, sending a message of uncertainty to both the locker room and the city.
Now being the 3rd-string quarterback for the Cleveland Browns, was that so much was made out of unbelievable. He actually made the team as the 3rd-string quarterback. Like that was a big deal. Like that was somewhat of a surprise to a lot of people. He should have been the first pick in the draft.
Kevin Stefanski appears to be doubling down to validate his approach. Despite sustained demand from Browns fans to see Shedeur Sanders reflected in chants, merchandise, and constant discussion, he continues to keep Dillon Gabriel in front on the depth chart. The decision functions as an assertion of control rather than a response to momentum. Even with clear signals from the fan base, Stefanski is staying with Gabriel and delaying a full evaluation of Sanders. It is a deliberate choice to maintain his plan and pacing, not to accelerate change. Cleveland is prioritizing continuity over recalibration, keeping any transition to Sanders on hold.
But yeah, I mean, the Browns are in a tough spot. They have wasted. You traded a ton of high draft capital to get Deshaun Watson. You've gotten nothing out of Deshaun Watson and missed an opportunity. Like, who knows who they would have drafted. Now, maybe they would have screwed up those picks and the Browns would still be in bad shape.
Andrew Berry is likely frustrated watching Dillon Gabriel default to conservative throws while the offense stalls. From a football perspective, this appears to be the hill Kevin Stefanski is choosing to stand on. Keeping Gabriel ahead of Shedeur Sanders has limited the unit's explosiveness and prevented a full evaluation of a higher ceiling option. Drives end quickly, field position flips, and momentum is lost while Sanders remains on the sideline. Fan patience is wearing thin. Each ineffective series intensifies criticism and shifts scrutiny toward the coaching staff's criteria for the depth chart. With every additional snap for Gabriel, the decision reads less like an open competition and more like rigid adherence to a plan that isn't producing results. The optics are clear. A dynamic quarterback sits while a cautious approach keeps the offense in neutral. If this continues, accountability questions will grow inside and outside the building. What performance benchmarks keep Gabriel ahead of Sanders? When will Sanders receive first-team reps in live situations to allow a fair comparison? The front office must decide whether to preserve continuity or pivot toward a timely assessment of Sanders. The longer the current approach stays in place, the more it signals stubbornness rather than adaptation, and the more pressure mounts to realign the plan with on-field output.
I honestly see it happening if the Browns lose a bunch of games. Like if they get 5 wins or less, I see the report coming out now that Stefanski will be fired. I don't want it to happen. I want the Browns to be good, win a bunch of games. I think that they're going to be a team that is slept on and can at least get 7 wins, which is why if they don't, I see Stefanski getting all the blame for that, and there'll be a new coach in Cleveland. Because their players, to me, are there once again. We've talked about the incredible rookie class.
The approach in Cleveland lacks consistency. One week, Andrew Berry signals he wants Shedeur Sanders on the field. The next, Dillon Gabriel gets the reps and the plan stays conservative. Through it all, Kevin Stefanski shows limited urgency despite pressure on his job security. Fans are asking for an offense that can push the ball, change field position, and produce points. Instead, the unit leans on short throws and cautious sequencing. Gabriel's play keeps the ceiling low and momentum static, while a full evaluation of Sanders is postponed. The result is growing frustration and a clear disconnect between the front office, coaching staff, and expectations in the stadium.
The NFL tried to teach him and his father a lesson. You don't act like that. You don't talk like that before a draft. We'll show you how our game is played. We will watch you plummet all the way. I think he would have gone undrafted except for that owner in Cleveland. And he is the key to everything because he is something of an against-the-grain maverick owner. He's kind of a wannabe Jerry.
Fan speculation is growing. Some believe Kevin Stefanski lacks confidence in Shedeur Sanders. Others think he's prioritizing Dillon Gabriel for reasons unrelated to performance. A more extreme view claims Stefanski is manipulating outcomes to secure a buyout. Whatever the motive, the risk is clear. This approach is straining his relationship with GM Andrew Berry and alienating the fan base. Pressure is rising, Berry's patience is running out, and supporters have shifted from requests to demands. If the current plan continues, calls for a change in quarterback and accountability will intensify. The 2025 NFL Draft was expected to be Shedeur Sanders' moment. Many projected him as a top 10 talent and a headline quarterback in one of the most discussed college football storylines in years. Instead of walking across the stage on the first night, he waited through 3 days without a call. There was no celebration, only silence. When the phone finally rang at pick 144 in the 5th round, it was the Cleveland Browns. With that selection, the financial outlook changed dramatically. The Sanders family believes this was not a typical draft slide, but the result of coordinated action. They are pursuing a $100 million lawsuit alleging collusion across parts of the league. In the months before the draft, Sanders was consistently discussed among the top quarterbacks in the class. Television and digital analysts praised his poise, accuracy, leadership, and command. Scouts highlighted a 74.1% completion rate, record-setting stretches at Colorado, and his rise from an HBCU star to a national figure. Consensus expectations expectations placed him in the first round or early second. Draft night unfolded differently. As picks accumulated, there was little indication that his name would be called. The atmosphere at his private gathering shifted from anticipation to doubt. When the Browns selected him late on day 3, projections for his first contract dropped from an estimated range in the mid-$30 million to approximately $4.6 million, with corresponding reductions in likely endorsements and long-term positioning. According to Deion Sanders and others close to the family, this was not about performance, injury, or conduct. They argue it was coordinated. Attorneys were contacted immediately. The allegation is straightforward. Sanders' value was suppressed intentionally. The family's position is that this was a calculated decision within parts of the league, not an isolated set of evaluations. The legal claims focus on communications that, if authenticated, could be significant: internal emails, text messages, and owner-to-owner conversations. The family's representatives contend that these materials show a deliberate effort to avoid drafting Sanders in early rounds based on perceived image concerns rather than football merit. One message reportedly under review framed the decision in branding terms. Drafting Shedeur would mean inheriting the Prime brand. The complaint asserts that this view led some teams to discourage others from selecting him unless necessary, not for film-based reasons, but to avoid perceived attention and external pressure tied to his family's profile. A related thread involves speculation about team fit and willingness to play for certain franchises. Past public comments by Deion Sanders were interpreted by some as signals of an Eli Manning scenario. The family's view is that these were strategic statements, not ultimatums. They argue that rather than engage in discussion, teams chose a passive approach, no direct rebuttal, reduced contact, and a collective reluctance to invest a premium pick. If phone records and written communications corroborate coordination, these items could become central exhibits. Media tone shifted as the draft neared. Coverage that had emphasized production and leadership began highlighting intangibles, interviews, and perceived coachability. Anonymous sourcing appeared in multiple outlets, with claims that Sanders skipped combine drills out of arrogance, bristled at film critique, or told one club, "Maybe I'm not the guy for you," after a tense session. A widely cited line, "Nobody wants a celebrity backup quarterback," was voiced by Colin Cowherd and circulated as shorthand for risk. The Sanders legal position is that these narratives did not arise organically, but reflected a coordinated leak pattern that undermined his market value. The family's contention is that this was primarily about control and compliance rather than football ability. They point out that Sanders did not fail a drug test, was not suspended, and did not produce poor athletic testing. His college resume included elite stretches and significant program elevation at 2 stops. The legal claim asserts that the league's power structure resisted a high-profile player aligned with a high-profile parent coach and an independent media presence. The allegation is that teams sought to avoid the perceived complexity that would come with selecting him early. The financial impact is a core component of the damages claim. Had Sanders been selected late first or early second round, projected 4-year compensation would likely have fallen between $30 to $35 million, with immediate access to higher tier endorsement opportunities and the brand leverage that accompanies a franchise quarterback designation. As a 5th-round pick, the initial contract value is a fraction of that total, and associated off-field opportunities are typically narrower. The suit reportedly seeks not only lost salary, but also the broader economic value linked to draft position, sponsorships, licensing, and the visibility that accelerates an early career trajectory. The filing's scope, as described by sources close to the family, extends beyond the league office. It may involve media outlets, scouting firms, and specific executives if discovery shows coordination or materially false statements that affected value. The argument is that the draft slide harmed not only Shedeur, but also the broader Sanders brand, affecting perceptions of Deion Sanders as a recruiter, coach, and public figure. The family's view is that narrative construction around brand risk and celebrity backup produced a measurable economic and reputational loss. If a court authorizes discovery, the process would likely compel emails, internal draft notes, and message archives from teams and third-party intermediaries. Subpoenas could be served on media organizations for sourcing records related to anonymous quotes. That level of transparency would be unusual and could reveal how information flows during pre-draft periods. The legal theory moves beyond a single player's evaluation to the draft's integrity, whether owners or executives acted in concert to reduce a prospect's value for reasons unrelated to football performance. The league has not publicly addressed these specific allegations. Background comments from executives characterize the claims as overreach. The family's camp maintains they have documentation sufficient to proceed. The comparison points referenced by observers include Deflategate, Spygate, and the Colin Kaepernick grievance, not because the facts are the same, but because of the potential scope, policies, practices, and the balance of power between the league and individuals challenging its processes. Another dimension of the dispute involves how the NFL perceives Deion Sanders, Coach Prime, and the autonomy he promotes. He built a large media footprint around his programs at Jackson State and Colorado, elevated his players' profiles, and spoke openly about fit and leverage. The family contends that this visibility, combined with statements about preferred destinations, triggered resistance. The complaint frames the response as a preference for compliance and predictability over independent branding and public negotiation. The suit also addresses the pre-draft decisions that critics point to, skipping the Senior Bowl, declining full workouts at the NFL Scouting Combine, and candid interviews about team fits. The family characterizes these as strategic choices commonly made by top prospects, not evidence of entitlement. Their view is that similar decisions by other players did not produce the same narrative because those players fit more comfortably within league expectations. The risk calculus is clear. Bringing a suit of this magnitude invites professional consequences. The family acknowledges that some within the league may react negatively. Their position is that the principle at stake, transparent and fair valuation, warrants the risk. The message they intend to send is that manufactured narratives and coordinated devaluation should face scrutiny, particularly when they affect earnings, opportunity, and reputation. If the case advances, several outcomes are possible. The court could find insufficient evidence of coordination, limiting the scope to individual judgments protected as opinion. It could also find enough to proceed to broader discovery, which would have implications beyond one player, including potential changes to how teams document evaluations and how media handle anonymous sourcing close to the draft. Agents might push for reforms, including clearer guardrails around leaks and standardized prospect communication records. For now, Sanders is working within the Browns structure. He has avoided public escalation beyond confirming focus on preparation and development. The lawsuit is a separate track managed by counsel. This dual approach, professional routine on the field and legal action off it, reflects the family's strategy. They intend to contest the process they believe harmed him while meeting club expectations day to day. The core allegations remain consistent across their statements. A talented quarterback saw his draft value suppressed by coordinated behavior tied to branding concerns and public positioning rather than football merit. Media narratives amplified that shift, and the result was a substantial, quantifiable loss. The remedy sought includes compensation and a measure of accountability that could deter similar conduct. Whether the claims are ultimately proven will depend on documentation and testimony. If emails, texts, and call logs substantiate coordination, the impact could be significant, prompting policy review around pre-draft communications and media engagement. If not, the case may narrow to disputes over opinion, perception, and the gray areas of scouting. Either way, the filing signals a willingness to confront entrenched practices and to test in court how far the process extends beyond film and interviews. This situation has moved from speculation to litigation. It addresses control, image, and power in a system that influences careers and compensation. It also underscores how public narratives can shape market outcomes. Sanders' path now has two tracks: earning opportunities on the field in Cleveland and seeking redress off the field for what the family views as an avoidable and orchestrated loss. The questions at stake are larger than one draft slot. They touch on how the league values independence, how information is weaponized, and what recourse exists when a player believes the evaluation moved from football to optics. The answers will emerge through practice reps and, potentially, through discovery and a courtroom record.
Honestly, guys notice it more when you're out winning games, right? If Cleveland starts off in a bad start, they're not doing well, and all of a sudden Shedeur or Dylan Gabriel are doing well in 7-on-7, they're throwing dimes, and practice drills, the number one defense can't stop them. People take notice of that, and the more that the players see it, they're gonna then the comments start happening over the lunch table. They start happening throughout the building, and that's when the pressure really will get severe.
The Cleveland Browns were focused on resolving their quarterback situation until Jason Kelce made pointed comments that triggered a strong reaction from ownership. The response inside the organization was immediate and intense. What exactly did Kelce say that has the dog pound on edge and the front office under pressure?
We seen that miserable game by the Cleveland Browns. So they throw Joe Flacco Flacco in there, and I like Joe Flacco. He did good, but they gave him the resource of all the first-team guys. Then they throw Dylan Gabriel in there with first teams and second teams. So Dylan always is getting protected. The same thing again, they gave this scrub max protection on every play. Yeah, he completed some passes, but let's talk about his mistakes. He's still inconsistent with his throws, but he at least had max protection.
The Cleveland Browns continue to be defined by inconsistency and avoidable setbacks. Even as fans hoped the organization had turned a corner, Jason Kelce, fresh off retirement, offered a direct critique that reignited doubts about the team's direction. His remarks implied the franchise's structure and decision-making remain unstable and recent progress may not hold. The takeaway for leadership is straightforward. Identify core issues, align on a coherent plan, and execute with discipline. For supporters, it's another sign that the problems run deeper than a single season.
They throw Shedeur Sanders in there with the lowest cab drivers you couldn't even get on 5th Street. And I'm pissed off, bro, because the play calling was abysmal. Look, even if you don't like Shedeur didn't even get a chance to be trash. Even if you think Shedeur is garbage, he didn't even get a chance to be garbage. That's how awful the offensive line was. Kevin Stefanski still doesn't want to give Shedeur second strings and first strings reps. Why is that?
Browns ownership's response shifted from measured to urgent. The pattern is familiar in Cleveland. The team once treated Johnny Manziel as a franchise solution, retained Hugh Jackson for a second year despite results, and invested heavily in Deshaun Watson through a costly trade and contract. These decisions reflect aggressive but poorly aligned planning. The outcome has been continued instability instead of sustained progress.
That this was the guy that they wanted to start. He's seasoned, he's experienced, he still has a big-time arm, even at his age, and they open with the Cincinnati Bengals. They wanted that experienced guy. He was always going to be the guy. They were not going to start Dylan Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders in week 1. Kenny Pickett had a hamstring injury. It makes it easy to go with Joe Flacco. And the question isn't and wasn't going to be who's the starter in Cleveland. The question is, who's going to be the backup in Cleveland? Who's going to be the number 2 quarterback when they open the season against these Bengals?
Fans still show up season after season, expecting improvement and bracing for setbacks. The usual pattern has been early optimism followed by a gradual collapse. But last season was different. For a sustained stretch, the Browns looked organized and competitive, resembling a functioning team.
Couple days, 3 days until roster cutdowns, how do you feel about that? Do you feel like you belong here on this team?
Obviously, I think overall as a player, I feel like I put in the work. I feel like everything I do, I try to do it to my best, and that's all I ask for. So I feel like everybody feels like, they should be on the team, and if you ask anybody on the team, would they feel like they belong, in their own eyes. So I feel like I do, but I'm my own player, I think about myself in a high regard.
The front office entered the offseason confident. Kevin Stefanski was being praised and the Dog Pound believed the team had made real progress. Then Jason Kelce delivered a pointed assessment that cut through the optimism. Fresh into retirement, the former Eagles All-Pro and Super Bowl champion said Cleveland still looks like a team patching over issues rather than building a durable contender. Kelce's view was direct. The Browns' structure is fragile, and the roster is too dependent on perfect health at quarterback. He argued the team is one injury away from losing continuity and sliding backward. Because Kelce has operated inside a stable, championship-level organization, his comments carried weight with players, media, and fans. The reaction was immediate. People took his critique seriously, not as outside noise, but as an informed evaluation of how a successful team should be built. Ownership also felt the impact. Jimmy Haslam's response shifted to urgency, a sign that leadership recognizes the stakes. The criticism arrives in the context of prior high-risk decisions, especially the fully guaranteed $230 million commitment tied to Deshaun Watson. Watson has missed time and shown inconsistency when available, and the contract has constrained flexibility. Kelce's remarks highlight why depth, alignment between the front office and coaching staff, and a clear contingency plan at quarterback are non-negotiable. The takeaway is straightforward. Cleveland must convert last season's progress into a stable framework, protect the quarterback, deepen critical positions, and establish a plan that survives injuries and short-term setbacks. Without that, the games that fueled optimism will remain temporary.
If you're a betting man, who do you think starts for the Browns at quarterback?
Okay, this is the situation. Kenny Pickett, they actually traded for him. Joe Flacco, no one's bringing Joe Flacco in the building thinking Joe Flacco's going to be the starter. If Joe Flacco is your starter,
You got a problem.
you have a huge problem. And if they were saying Shedeur was the starter as the 5th rounder, you got a real problem too, because he passed over all these guys in these reps in the offseason in shorts, in bikini shorts, Speedos and stuff. Like, no. That kind of stuff. So I'm not that surprised. When you put down a 3rd round pick on a quarterback, you do believe he has a certain skill set.
Jason Kelce stated the obvious. Cleveland committed to a quarterback who hasn't played at an elite level in years, and Joe Flacco's playoff run didn't change the long-term outlook. Ownership appeared more upset that the criticism was public than by the substance of the critique. Many fans agreed. They've seen this pattern before. Rosters age, injuries are inevitable, and when a single contract dominates the cap, one setback at quarterback can undermine the entire season. Kelce's broader point was about structure. The Browns prioritized the high-cost, uncertain starter over depth and contingency. The late-season surge masked issues that remain: limited cap flexibility, thin depth at key positions, and an offense that lacks a credible plan B. Fans recognize how quickly a strong defense can decline with injuries, and how an offense without redundancy stalls. The AFC North raises the stakes. Baltimore with Lamar Jackson sustains a top standard. Cincinnati with Joe Burrow returns to contention when healthy. Pittsburgh rarely slips below .500 under Mike Tomlin and wins with defense and consistency. In that environment, Cleveland can't rely on perfect health or peak form from one player. The path forward is clear. Diversify cap allocation, reinforce the offensive line and receiver depth, carry a legitimate backup plan at quarterback, and install a scheme that functions regardless of who is under center.
Given what we saw yesterday with Shedeur Sanders, somebody on the Cleveland Browns is 100% getting fired, probably by the end of this year. The person who's probably going to end up getting fired is Kevin Stefanski, because I know that he didn't want Shedeur Sanders on the team. It was Andrew Berry who made that pick. You can't really go against your GM. Bad things happen in this situation. But Shedeur Sanders is not without fault for what we saw yesterday. This is the play that we saw yesterday that has the internet just exploding, where Shedeur Sanders took like a 24-yard sack. Half of the internet is saying that this is all Kevin Stefanski's fault.
Cleveland showed progress last season, but the underlying concerns remain. Jason Kelce highlighted them directly. The Browns' long-term plan is fragile, cap-constrained, and overly dependent on perfect health at quarterback. His comments focused attention on structural issues, roster depth, continuity in coaching, and a sustainable offensive approach, rather than a single hot streak. That criticism resonated because it reflected what many around the league already see. Ownership's reaction underscored the sensitivity. Jimmy Haslam has presided over frequent coaching and quarterback changes, and external scrutiny carries weight when it comes from a respected veteran with championship experience. Kelce's remarks reinforce that last year's Joe Flacco stretch was a short-term solution, not a foundation. The team still needs a durable plan that can withstand injuries and inconsistency. The practical takeaway is clear: stabilize the system, diversify cap usage, and build depth at key positions so the offense functions regardless of who is under center. That includes a coherent development pathway for younger talent such as Shedeur Sanders, with defined practice reps, protection, and scheme alignment. Kelce didn't say anything outrageous. He articulated the gap between a brief surge and a credible long-term contender.
Have the faith of a mustard seed. Right, because this is the greatest resurrection since Jesus the Christ. Right, like at some point, Joe Flacco was thinking about getting into TV.
Yeah.
Right, Joe Flacco didn't have a job, and then now you not only come back and start for the Cleveland Browns late in the 2023 season, but they came back around to you. You're now the day one starter for a franchise that just 2 years ago was in the playoffs.
The Browns' quarterback situation remains unsettled. Deshaun Watson was expected to be the long-term answer, but injuries and inconsistent play have prevented him from reaching an elite level. When the team turned to Joe Flacco after Watson's season deteriorated, Flacco immediately lifted the offense and produced results that highlighted the gap between expectations and reality. That a 39-year-old late addition could outperform a $230 million starter was not just a short-term surprise, it raised fundamental questions about roster construction and evaluation. Quarterback depth has been fragile, and the late-season surge masked broader structural problems. Jason Kelce's remarks made that clear. Cleveland is vulnerable if the starter is unavailable, cap flexibility is limited, and the offensive plan lacks a stable contingency. His critique drew attention to leadership and planning as much as on-field performance. Jimmy Haslam's strong reaction reflects the pressure on ownership. The organization has promoted a message of stability and progress, but Kelce's assessment suggested those gains are not yet durable. The path forward requires a realistic approach to the cap, a credible backup plan at quarterback, and a system that holds up regardless of personnel.
Shedeur is lighting it up in practice every day. You're not even a half bit curious to see what he could do with the ones. That makes no sense. And then on top of all of that, you got players going on podcasts and talking to people in the media saying this guy is really good. Like, this guy is legit. So even your peers respect you enough. How is it that the coaches can't see that? It always starts with the players, where the player's like, hey, you see that? You seen that pass he threw?
The Cleveland Browns were taken by surprise when quarterback Shedeur Sanders stepped in for first-team snaps, asserting control of the drill and instantly highlighting deficiencies across the rest of the room. His confident command forced coaches to pause practice clips, reevaluate progressions, and consider immediate adjustments to the depth chart. Within minutes, discussions spread throughout the facility and online forums as fans weighed what Sanders' showing means for the current starters. The organization now faces an urgent, data-driven decision on whether Sanders should move up permanently. Shedeur Sanders arrived at Browns practice, took several first-team reps, and the entire quarterback group immediately felt the pressure. Coaches erased the whiteboard and reviewed their plans. Staff members exchanged concerned comments, and observers began asking whether Sanders was positioned to assume a larger role.
Tony, every year we see at least 1 to 2 teams. They were in last place in their division the year before. No one thought they'd be good, and then they were good. It almost seems like no one's even assuming the Browns can be that, but we see it happen every year. And I get the quarterback stuff, but like, correct me if I'm wrong, Tony. The Browns are trying to run the football, play good defense, not turn the ball over in the passing game, and try and take advantage when they can, correct? That's what they're trying to do.
That was the 2020 offense.
The Cleveland Browns are still searching for stability at quarterback. Deshaun Watson is yet to deliver consistent starter-level production that justifies his contract, and each game renews doubts about whether he can regain peak form. Behind him, rookie Dorian Thompson-Robinson shows promise but remains inexperienced and unpolished. Coaches are evaluating alternatives each week and may need to adjust the depth chart if progress stalls. The roster around them is built to contend now, so ongoing uncertainty under center is increasingly costly.
As we talk about, we do believe in best player available. We do believe in positional value, and we didn't necessarily expect him to be available in the in the 5th round, and so we love adding competition to every position room and adding him to compete with the guys that are already in there. We felt like that was the appropriate thing to do.
The Browns quarterback group is unsettled. Deshaun Watson has yet to provide the reliable, high-level play his contract demands, while rookie Dorian Thompson-Robinson remains promising but unpolished. Depth behind them consists mostly of veterans whose experience lies more in holding clipboards than leading offenses. The coaching staff needs an immediate answer, not a 3-year development project. Shedeur Sanders enters as that potential solution. At Colorado, he passed for more than 3,200 yards despite working behind one of college football's poorest offensive lines, consistently demonstrating poise, quick processing, and accurate ball placement under heavy pressure. Film shows steady reads and disciplined footwork, traits that offset concerns that his profile is built on family name or media attention. Cleveland viewed the signing as a low-risk, high-reward move. Early in camp, Sanders received a handful of first-team snaps intended merely as an evaluation. Those plays quickly changed practice tempo. The ball came out on time, receivers hit their landmarks, and the defense struggled to adjust. Coaches immediately expanded the review using phrases such as evaluate every option, an indication that the depth chart was no longer fixed. Watson sensed the scrutiny. Thompson Robinson increased his urgency. Within minutes, competition in the quarterback room intensified. Sanders repeated that performance in subsequent sessions. His footwork remained clean, progression sharp, and throws firm and precise. Each strong rep forced staff to reassess the plan to keep him buried on the developmental track. The broader context magnifies the pressure. Cleveland's roster is built to contend now. Fans are weary of quarterback turnover, and the front office cannot afford another costly misstep under center. Around the league, rookie passers rarely wait multiple seasons anymore. Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, CJ Stroud, and even late pick Brock Purdy established that precedent. If Watson opens the regular season and struggles, public calls for Sanders will grow, especially if the rookie flashes in preseason. Alternatively, another team could attempt to acquire him if Cleveland hesitates to elevate his role. Each scenario underscores the same reality. Sanders' emergence has turned a routine camp evaluation into a critical decision point for the franchise.
And we saw Dillon Gabriel go 11-11 with the first team, Shedeur Sanders go 11-11 with the second unit. So that was really the big wrinkle today.
Yes, and of course, it was the first time that we have seen Shedeur Sanders get any of those coveted 11-on-11 reps. Of course, again, it wasn't with the first team offense or against the first team defense, but it's progress. And that means that he's going in the right direction, that the arrow is pointing up. He's coming up the learning curve. So that's good for him. And I actually thought just overall, he had a better day than Dillon had today. He completed more passes. He was more on point. In fact, in that 11-on-11 period, he threw a near touchdown.
Desperation can push franchises toward aggressive decisions, especially when their quarterback options appear unconvincing or outdated. One scenario now emerging is that Sanders earns enough confidence to take full preseason reps with the starters, forcing Cleveland to revisit a depth chart it believed was settled at the beginning of July. His practices demonstrate that the excitement around him is grounded in measurable performance. Accurate, high-velocity passes against first-team defenses, and confident command of the huddle. Each strong outing also heightens league-wide interest. Rival scouts adjust evaluations, and general managers revisit their notes, aware that a viable young quarterback may soon become available. Inside the facility, the personnel staff must balance short-term results with long-term roster planning, knowing that an early move could reshape salary cap allocations and locker room dynamics. The pressure on Watson and Thompson Robinson escalates accordingly. Both must produce visible progress to maintain their current roles. Cleveland's recent history shows how quickly promising quarterback situations can devolve into controversy. The franchise has turned potential breakthroughs into organizational turmoil before, so observers remain cautious about how this competition will unfold.
When he led college football in completion percentage and he threw almost 40 touchdowns for over 4,000 yards, how tall was he? Because they make it seem like he shrunk all of a sudden, RC. Oh, how lively was his arm? Because all I know is somebody did that. Somebody threw for over 4,000 yards, somebody threw for almost 40 touchdowns, and somebody led college football in completion percentage. Now, I'm trying to figure out, what I try to figure out all the time, Mel, is how a guy that hadn't played football in almost 5 months.
Shannon Sharpe has publicly defended Shedeur Sanders and criticized those questioning him. Sanders has earned higher recognition and some fans are responding negatively. Although there's debate about whether he belongs on a second team list, Sharpe maintains that Sanders' career is clearly ascending. Reactions on social media are mixed. Some users are angry, others are surprised, and a few say they anticipated this result. The conversation remains active. When reports confirmed that Shedeur Sanders had been elevated from second team to near top tier status, Shannon Sharpe issued an emphatic response. He delivered a detailed rebuttal to critics, underscoring why Sanders deserved the promotion and directly challenging those who doubted the decision.
I don't think that he was underprepared during these meetings. I don't believe any of these stories that he showed up arrogant and that he was bombing his interviews. I mean, you watch the film, he's on time, he's on point. You watch his interviews, he answers like a 10-year NFL veteran. Like, he's clearly dominating OTAs. It's every single day there's a new report of how well he's doing for the Browns in OTAs. And I mean, you can say what you want, it's just OTAs. Okay, if that's your new narrative, then he's doing exactly what he needs to be doing. He's on point, he's on time, he's getting the respect of his teammates, and he's making plays. So we're gonna see years down the line, something's gonna come out that I don't know what exactly it was, but something will come out.
Critics have been waiting for an opportunity to dismiss Sanders. They labeled him overrated, accused him of benefiting from nepotism, and claimed his profile came only from his last name and polished image. Within their own echo chamber, they cited every game in which he fell short of huge passing numbers as validation of their doubts. Since Sanders has begun receiving formal recognition, criticism has escalated. A wave of self-appointed analysts is dissecting his throwing mechanics and team role, and many online commentators now argue that his promotion reflects deeper problems within the sport. Shannon Sharpe rejected each criticism directed at Shedeur Sanders. During the broadcast, he turned a routine segment into a detailed examination, acting as presenter, interrogator, and fact-checker. Sharpe walked viewers through game film, season statistics, and scouting reports to show why Sanders merited his recent promotion. Whenever a panelist claimed Sanders had not earned the role, Sharpe countered with completion percentages, efficiency ratings under pressure, and documented late-game drives that changed outcomes. He stressed that the backlash was driven less by on-field evidence and more by reluctance to revise earlier opinions. Sharpe argued that critics were upset not because Sanders lacked qualifications, but because his progress contradicted their initial narrative. By the end of the discussion, Sharpe had moved past simple defense and reframed Sanders as a clear example of performance-based advancement, demonstrating that early predictions can be wrong.
Never heard of no Dylan Gabriel or Tyler Shock. What the hell is that? So how is Shedeur Sanders going behind them? I'll tell you how. Collusion. 4 different times they passed on him. How the hell does that happen? 4 rounds. It doesn't happen to a quarterback. We've never seen anything like this before. Shedeur Sanders with the watch. Shedeur Sanders with his bravado. Shedeur Sanders with this supposed arrogance or whatever.
Shedeur Sanders' advancement did not happen by chance. While detractors questioned his resume online, he continued to prepare, attend every practice, and deliver accurate throws under pressure. The contrast between his output and the complaints directed at him has been stark. Some critics even argued the selection committee was, quote, biased toward performance, as if rewarding strong play were improper. Rumors quickly followed. Certain commentators speculated that a public relations push from the Sanders family must have influenced voters, suggesting everything from coordinated media strategies to alleged favors for coaches. None of these theories addresses the basic point. Sanders earned his promotion through consistent production, poise in the pocket, precise ball placement, and efficient decision-making. Shannon Sharpe highlighted these facts during his response. He noted that Sanders' performance metrics justify the recognition and emphasize that resistance to the move stems more from prior prejudice than from substantive evaluation. For Sharpe, the goal was clear: present the data, challenge unfounded claims, and correct the narrative. The discussion therefore became a broader statement about acknowledging merit and abandoning outdated assumption.
Colin Cowherd defend college basketball coaches who have gotten a DUI, come to their defense and say they didn't need to be fired, that they deserve a second chance. But Shedeur Sanders drives 40 miles over the speed limit, gets a one-on-one ticket, and Colin Cowherd comes on his show today and says he's out on Shedeur Sanders. He's seen enough. He can't support him anymore. He can't be in the Shedeur Sanders camp because of this speeding ticket.
Shannon Sharpe addressed commentators who portray constant doubt as expertise. Those who discount strong performances with "we'll see" but declare bust after a single mistake. He noted their belief that progress only counts if an athlete visibly struggles. Sharpe's response was methodical rather than emotional. He presented evidence, cited statistics, and calmly refuted each claim. Following his remarks, several critics began revising or deleting earlier posts, recasting themselves as longtime supporters of Shedeur Sanders despite having questioned him for months. Sharpe insists on accountability, naming specific individuals and dates while requesting public acknowledgement of prior errors. He argues that analysts cannot spend months undermining a player's potential and then quietly adopt a supportive stance once the athlete succeeds.
These are serious, big-time, top-of-the-line playmakers that they have. If you can go 45-42 in the fourth quarter because your quarterback set the school record with 510 yards passing. He was flawless. Shedeur is big time. I didn't know for sure, will it translate to the next level of competition? Yes, it might translate to the next level of competition as he can play.
Critics who once claimed Shedeur Sanders was unprepared now hesitate to acknowledge their mistake. They resist retracting earlier comments and struggle to accept that an athlete can succeed without their approval. Sanders continues to share practice clips and game highlights without engaging the debate, while Shannon Sharpe documents every dismissive remark, ready to revisit them on national television. The disapproval did not slow Sanders. It underscored his progress and exposed the gap between perception and performance. As a result, the conversation has shifted. Analysts who doubted him now describe him as undervalued and publish detailed evaluations of his mechanics and game management, suggesting long-standing familiarity with his career. In a matter of weeks, critics have recast themselves as advocates, demonstrating how quickly opinion can change when consistent results leave little room for doubt. Shannon Sharpe signaled that his commentary is not over. He considers Sanders' advancement a positive outcome for every athlete who has been overlooked or criticized for having confidence. Sharpe stressed that analysts do not have the authority to determine who deserves recognition based on personal preference. The reaction to Sanders' promotion, he argued, revealed how quickly opinions can shift once results are undeniable. Sharpe pointed out that many vocal critics became quiet when confronted with objective performance data. This exchange, Sharpe insisted, reached beyond defending a single quarterback. It challenged the practice of dismissing achievements that do not fit familiar narratives. He reminded viewers that success does not require external approval and that consistent talent will surface despite online commentary intended to minimize it. While critics reconsider their positions, Sharpe remains steady, assigning credit to the athlete and allowing the scoreboard to confirm the argument. In his view, the statistics speak clearly enough. Sharpe also emphasized that the intensity of the backlash must be placed in context. College football is a volatile environment where unexpected outcomes are common. Therefore, declaring failure based on incomplete evidence only weakens the credibility of sports analysis. The discussion underscored the need for measured evaluation rather than reactive judgment.
Dak Jackson and him and everybody else that we talked to have said that Shedeur looks good. He looks really good. He looks better. And we got Zach that say Dylan Gabriel ain't even an NFL quarterback.
It's true.
So how is it that this man can't get a rep with the ones, but that non-NFL quarterback can?
We all
what
agree with
sense
that.
does that make?
Some observers now claim that recognizing Shedeur Sanders' strong performance undermines football's traditional standards, even though they previously argued he received coverage only because of his father. Faced with Sanders' current statistics, those critics are searching for explanations that fit their earlier narrative. The data have always been clear. Their earlier objections ignored that fact. Shannon Sharpe is openly highlighting this reversal, comparing past negative remarks with Sanders' recent 400-yard games to demonstrate the gap between criticism and evidence. Sharpe did not force these commentators to backtrack. He simply displayed their earlier claims alongside Sanders' results, allowing the contrast to speak for itself.
What do you think is happening in Browns camp? What do you think is going to happen there? Before I let you go, Lewis.
You know, I think it really does. It really does all depend on how Kevin is able to, as it relates to Shedeur, work him in enough. Well, one, Shedeur has to earn the right for Kevin and the staff to have discussions about, hey, we got to get him more reps with the ones and twos. We got to get him more reps with the ones and twos when we're going team period, not just walk through or not just 7-on-7 team.
Louis Riddick reacted sharply on air after viewing practice footage from the Cleveland Browns. The clip showed quarterback Shedeur Sanders executing a string of precise throws while the Browns head coach watched with a broad smile. Riddick questioned whether the session was focused on evaluation or celebration, arguing that visible enthusiasm from the staff could cloud objective assessment of a rookie's progress. Earlier in the segment, Riddick's tone had been measured once the Sanders highlights appeared. He criticized the perception that a routine practice was being treated like a marquee event. He stressed that coaching reactions should remain subdued until performance translates into game situations. Riddick concluded by calling for accountability and asking the Browns to clarify how they plan to manage expectations for Shedeur Sanders as training camp continues.
Couldn't imagine me myself saying, hey, you know what? As someone who has been at the very bottom to try and ascend to like some level of success, I could never imagine going, you know what would be really cool? I'm gonna play a joke on someone like this and make pretend that I'm a GM and I'm drafting you when actually I'm not, and then I'm gonna hang up and just giggle about it. Man, what the hell are we doing? Seriously, what are we doing when we think that that kind of crap is funny?
I don't know. Trying to get likes on TikTok.
I don't have the right words for it.
Right, Lewis, I'm gonna say this.
I don't have the right words for it.
Few situations unsettle a former front office executive faster than watching coaches celebrate a rookie quarterback before pads come on in August. In Louis Riddick's view, the Browns staff did more than acknowledge promise. They acted as though they had already secured their franchise leader. Throughout the session, Shedeur Sanders delivered 40-yard throws off his back foot, ran crisp 2-minute drills, and displayed steadiness rare for a first-year player. According to reports, each successful rep drew audible admiration from the sideline, highlighting how quickly enthusiasm has escalated. When Riddick reviewed the same practice tape and heard the glowing comments, he challenged the reaction on live television. He argued that a few controlled drills should not override the methodical scouting and development work that normally guides roster decisions. Riddick's criticism focused less on Sanders' talent than on the evaluation process. He warned that comparing a prospect to established stars or joking about renaming the stadium creates pressure before the player has taken an NFL hit, faced a disguised coverage, or logged a preseason snap. Praising potential is acceptable, he said, but anointing a savior in July risks repeating the organization's history of premature quarterback expectations. Sanders brings confidence shaped by his father's legacy and his own disciplined preparation, yet Riddick insists that progress must be confirmed over time. He urged the Browns to temper public excitement, follow a structured development plan, and reserve celebratory reactions for on-field results that matter. Regular season production under live pressure, not highlight clips from a midsummer workout.
He has to earn that. Kevin has to figure out a way to do that, so then you can reasonably assess what you have in him compared to Dillon Gabriel, compared to Kenny, compared to Joe Flacco. If you don't, then the conversation surrounding him is going to continue to be what it's been, which is, but for some people, he was overhyped all along. He's not that great of an athlete, doesn't have a big enough arm. There's a reason why he was a 5th round pick, blah, 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 which I don't believe. I believe if he is given enough reps, earns enough reps, and then is given enough reps in meaningful situations, he can throw the ball just as good as Joe, if not better, just as good as Kenny, if not better, just as good as Dillon Gabriel.
After more than 2 decades in personnel and broadcast analysis, Louis Riddick was dismayed to see a franchise bypass basic evaluation standards after only a series of eye-catching minicamp throws. Reviewing practice footage from Cleveland, he observed Shedeur Sanders drilling 40-yard passes against uncovered receivers and running 2-minute sequences with poise. In Riddick's view, those reps, conducted without pads, contact, or a disguised rush, show arm talent but reveal little about how a rookie handles game pressure. Riddick said the Browns' reaction drifted from objective assessment to outright admiration. Multiple reports indicated coaches were sketching new concepts for Sanders during dinner and referring to dedicated Shedeur packages well before a padded practice. Even the veterans in the quarterback room showed no visible alarm, a sign that staff excitement had already reset the internal depth chart conversation. The analyst emphasized that his concern is not Sanders' skill set. He acknowledged the quarterback's arm strength, footwork, and composure, but rather how quickly the club appears willing to declare him its long-term answer. Riddick cited several past prospects who received similar midsummer acclaim only to stall once real competition began. Given Cleveland's long history of quarterback turnover, he argued the organization should focus on incremental milestones, processing post-snap reads, surviving live pass rushes, and rebounding from mistakes on Sunday afternoons. Riddick urged the Browns to temper expectations and follow a structured development plan so Shedeur Sanders can progress without undue pressure. One coach reportedly admitted he replayed Tuesday's scrimmage film so often that he lost sleep, an anecdote Riddick offered as proof that enthusiasm is already outpacing reality.
All asking now is what is going on with Shedeur Sanders, and so the floor is yours. Maybe you can make sense of this free fall with what was at one point the top-rated quarterback in this draft class.
Yeah, Shay, I think at this point in time, this really isn't a football discussion any longer. This is a personal discussion. This is about it's a fit discussion. It's whether or not teams are just comfortable with everything that comes along with Shedeur in terms of who he is as a person, all the people that are surrounding him in terms of his inner circle, and whether or not teams deem that to be something that they're comfortable with. Right or wrong, that's the only conclusion you can really come to at this point.
Louis Riddick voiced an escalating concern during the segment. Having witnessed numerous quarterback setbacks in his career, he worries another may be forming, not because Shedeur Sanders lacks talent, but because the praise around him is growing without restraint. Sanders has simply attended practice, delivered accurate passes, led the huddle, and shown the composure expected of an NFL player. Riddick fears the Browns' reaction, treating routine drills as proof of long-term success, risks setting premature expectations. He cautioned that the organization seems ready to celebrate a franchise savior before Sanders has taken a competitive snap, noting that such early adulation has derailed promising prospects in the past and could impede Sanders' measured development.